Thank you. So I want to thank Brian because he coined this hashtag. He's a marketing genius. And so I posted on my LinkedIn what I was going to talk about, and he and Lauren kicked it off with this. So I appreciate that. I am going to, I didn't turn it off. I didn't turn this off. I don't know how to go to the next one. Click, enhance. Nope, oh, there it goes. So a disclaimer, some of you will, I anticipate that the majority of the audience here will absolutely love this. This talk is really kind of a culmination of everything that we've talked about for the past few days, but now we're going to take the damn filter off. And when I say that, you're going to understand exactly what I mean as I go through this talk. And, so I apologize ahead of time, but not really if I curse. Just understand that we need truth and honesty, and the only way to get to the real truth is to cut the shit, right? So that's really what this is about. It's about cutting out all the noise, all the crap in the middle, and getting to the root cause of what's going on so we can solve some problems. So, a little bit of truth behind this is, this was my preferred title. I actually sent up 2 titles to Mike when I was asked to give this talk. And so the boundaries that they gave me for this talk were no boundaries. And I was like, oh dear Lord, this could be troublesome. So I sent up 2 titles and 2 descriptions just in case I needed to tone it down a little bit. And Morgan really, he spoke to my heart because he said, you can use that title as long as it's not just showmanship and you're going to be controversial. And when I told my wife that, she was like, oh God. Because for the folks who know me, they know that I don't go by the norms. I've been in the Air Force for 16 and a half years, and I probably could have gotten promoted earlier if I just would have shut up and colored, but that's not who I am. And if people ask for true honesty, I'm going to give them true honesty. It doesn't matter who you are or what level of leadership you're at. If you want to hear the truth, I will give you the truth. Now, to give somebody the truth, it doesn't mean being nice, but it also doesn't mean, being an adjective. Oh, you thought I was going to say something else. But, you can throw in whatever word you want to in there, but when you're asking for truth and honesty, please expect that if you ask me, you're going to get it. But along with that, I think that creates a certain culture that we need, and a lot of that culture right now is missing. Let's get it on. A lot of these names you recognize as amazing leadership gurus, some folks who know how to solve problems. And yes, I put Stephen King up there because sometimes you just, you need to solve problems in an interesting manner. But the problem with this is, a lot of us have read these books, we know these authors, they're great at what they do, but the problem is we know this information, or a lot of us know this information, we gain that knowledge, but we don't apply it. And that's problematic, right? You can go to school forever. You can read all the leadership books you want, but if you don't apply it to your everyday life, it's absolutely useless. And I see this all the time. So if you're going to read a book because you want to learn something and you want to apply it, good on you. But if you're not going to apply it, it's kind of worthless knowledge. That's my viewpoint, at least. So I'm curious, how many enlisted folks do we have here? Or prior enlisted? Yeah, that's what I thought. So for those of you watching online, which like down in Augusta, Georgia right now, they have like watch parties and all sorts of stuff. If you log into Zoom, you're going to see how many people are tuned in. So the pressure's on. So for the folks online who couldn't see, we had, I don't know, maybe 10 or less people raise their hands for being enlisted. And the reason why I bring this up is because I use memes, by the way, because I find that memes can communicate in a very efficient manner. The reason I bring this up is because I'm an enlisted guy. I'm stationed down at the 480th Group. And, I was on the borderline between whether I wanted to go officer or stay enlisted, and I'm really glad that I stayed enlisted because I find that we can have a ground level impact on a lot of things. And so I bring that up because, enlisted are kind of rowdy, at least that's what we're known for, and this poor captain looks like he's just seen something absolutely horrible. But I bring that up because my goal for the next DEF conference is to triple the number of attendees that are here who are enlisted. So it's quite the goal, right? I know that going to Denver last year at that DEF conference, that was one of the goals, was to get more enlisted involved. But I'm here to tell you that it's going to happen. I won't tell you what I'll do to get them here, but I will get them here. So I added this slide yesterday. I channeled my inner Ben McMartin and waited until last night to really revamp, or the night prior actually, to revamp what it was going to be. And so when I saw this, I've seen this a couple of times throughout my career, and it makes my brain hurt. And it's really telling, right? Like, this is a process. An absolutely horrific process, but it's a process. And so I love The Office, and if my son's watching right now, he's going to be so happy that I used an Office meme. But why is it that we are this way? How did it get this bad? And I can tell you that the industrial age model looks like it would work well. Again, I'm in the Air Force, so you'll find that I use a lot of Air Force examples. Just apply this to whatever organization you're in, because I'll bet General Murphy's next check that it probably applies to a lot of different agencies and entities, right? Thank you, sir, for volunteering that next check. But essentially, there are 7 levels between the worker and the Pentagon, and it looks like it would work well, right? But it doesn't, because that's not reality. The reality, especially when you account for everybody in between who needs something, they want to be a part of something, they find that I'm just an airman. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that. I'm just an airman. It's like saying I'm just a corporal. I'm just a lance corporal. I'm just a specialist. I'm just an E4. That is like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I'm going to show you some examples of how we're able to get around this. Oops. So, yeah, I gave up my next slide, but essentially what you see here is the game of telephone. Because what that airman says on the front line, doing the job day in and day out, when it finally reaches the top, it's not at all what they said. Because it's gone through a million different filters, right? We put on the happy face, we don't want to call the baby ugly, and folks, I'm so sorry, but I'm here to tell you that some babies are ugly. Not mine, but some babies are ugly. Right? But nobody wants to call it like it is. Nobody wants to tell it like it is because they don't want to air their own dirty laundry. They don't want to look like the bad guy. They don't want their program to be the one that looks broken. And that is problematic. So we have to change the way that we're doing business within the DoD, because if we don't, things are going to change. So I'd like to share with you 3 personal examples that I have of some amazing leaders who said, this just doesn't work. We need something different. My first example is Colonel Brown. He's sitting over here on the wall, and putting him on the spot here for a second, because for about 15 years of my career, I spent those 15 years in mental health clinics, not as a patient. I probably could have been, though. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I probably could have been a patient the majority of that time. And I'll let you in on a little insight. It's not the patients who are crazy, it's the staff. It's like herding cats. So it was amazing when I got to the 480th ISR group as an embedded mental health tech, because Colonel Brown was in charge at the time, and there was this word innovation buzzing around, and I was like, wait a second, we can do that here? And the way that he approached his wing and the things that he challenged us to do and the events that he was able to take a risk and hold were nothing short of phenomenal. And the reason why I say that is because essentially he said, that model doesn't work. I want to know what's really going on. Not that he doesn't trust the people in between, but because we just don't have the time anymore. I don't know if you guys watch the news or were listening over the past couple of days, but Russia and China are kind of a big deal right now. And so if we just sit around and wait for things to happen the way that they've always been, it's not going to be effective. So Colonel Brown basically took out all of the middlemen, and he broke the filter. And so the example that I like to use of that is he had a Slack channel, and he was engaged in the Slack channel. And if you don't know what Slack is, it's like the way that I usually describe it to people it's like AOL chat rooms. That's the way that yeah. So on Slack, I sent him a message, and I was like really careful in how I crafted this message because I have some pitch training, went to Stanford for learning how to pitch properly and pitch methodology. And myself and this amazing Master Sergeant, Sarah Davidson, we had this idea that airmen have great ideas, but they just don't know how to pitch them. So I sent him a message on Slack, and he said, yeah, here's my number, call me. And I was like, what? At the time, I was in E6, and prior to Colonel Brown, I'd never said 2 words to my wing commander. 15 years in the military. That's telling. I spent an hour and a half on the phone with Colonel Brown, and I think it was New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. And that was phenomenal, right? Like, you talk about culture, and you talk about how do you change culture one experience at a time. And so that was my catalyst to say, this guy means business. This is amazing. Let me continue to honcho this down to the finish line and make sure that this isn't something that just falls off. The next one is Kernel Sawada, and I'm sure that all of you were looking at this name like, yeah, we know. So I was actually at Langley doing a pitch class, the very first iteration of my pitch class for folks who were going to pitch to Colonel Brown, and I had a voicemail from Kernel Sawada. And she said, hey, I have a proposal for you. And I was like, what universe am I in? You know, an 06 is calling me and saying that she has a proposal for me, and when I talked to her, she said, I understand that you're good at pitching and you're a pitch coach. Would you be interested in coaching some of the teams that are going to talk to and pitch to the Secretary of the Air Force and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force? And by the way, Mark Cuban was on the panel this past year. And I said, yes, absolutely. And so it was phenomenal. This leader took a risk and said, hey, I believe in you. I want to see what you can do. So how about this opportunity? And I said, heck yes. And so I've done it for 2 years now, and it has been absolutely phenomenal to see the ideas that people come up with and that they just break down those silos. They break down the old way of doing things. And so the most recent example is General Murphy. Again, I had to question what universe I was in there for a second because it just continuously happens over and over again. And I'm not trying to toot my horn, but the fact that people keep on reaching out like this, it makes a guy feel good, right? So I was down at 25th Air Force doing a senior leader symposium, and I did a design thinking workshop for about 30 to 40 minutes. And I got a phone call at home on my cell phone, and it was Colonel Nelson, who's a doc, and he said, hey, this is Colonel Nelson, and he explained who he was and where he worked, and he said, I was in the design thinking workshop that you did, and some of the statements that you made, I really think that our senior leadership needs to hear this. Would you mind if you did a brief for General Murphy? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And he said, okay, good, because I already told him yes. And I was like, all right. So in speaking to General Murphy, which, by the way, sir, I think you do know where I was at the time. I was actually on vacation in Florida with my family, and I holed myself up in our minivan, and I was briefing General Murphy on going through the slide deck and things. And he said, I think this is amazing, but I think that if you just kind of took this on and told us how it needs to look, I think it could be even better. And what he meant was an Air Force innovation pipeline for the Air Force Medical Service. And again, my response, yes. So I am known for pushing boundaries and asking for forgiveness instead of permission, which, again, I probably could have gotten promoted a little earlier had I not taken that approach. But I went ahead and posted on Reddit. So if you all know anything about Reddit, it can be a shit show sometimes, don't get me wrong. But you get some honest feedback, especially in the Air Force subreddit. People will tell you what they think. Oh dear Lord, they will tell you what they think. But I took a risk. Now keep in mind that I did this strategically. I didn't say, General Murphy told me to do X, Y, and Z. I kept it very sanitized. I didn't even say who I was because I used a burner account, AFMS iCell, as you can see. And so some of the responses there were, how do you know that this isn't just an OPSEC thing? So I sent a message to the moderator and I said, this is who I am. You know, you can shoot me an email on AFNet. So they verified who I was, and I went ahead and just set up 2 easy forms. All these forms look like, and I wanted to get feedback from the Air Force medical community as well as Air Force patients of the medical community. So our customers and the people who work in the community. And all it was, if you can't see it, all it was is just a simple entry box. Now, I thought to myself, you know, for quantitative data and to have a really good survey, and I said, no, people aren't going to fill that out. What if I just let people say whatever they want to say? Now, some of the feedback was interesting, to say the least. But some of the feedback was heart-wrenching. And what I came to find was that if you just ask people what they want or what's wrong, they're going to tell you. And so for as many issues as there were a lot of action steps. So the ones that floated to the top that were extreme issues, I took those, I sent an email to General Murphy, and I said, these are some of the things that I found. And he said, thank you so much. And I was like, whew, thank you for saying that, because I really pushed the boundaries on this one. So what were the results? Well, within 48 hours, 239 comments, 211 form submissions, not just comments, but form submissions from customers and 75 from the community. Overall, 603 submissions, along with emails that came direct to me on the Gmail that I set up, which again was another burner Gmail account because I didn't know how this was going to go. If it was going to go south, I'd be like, it wasn't me. And it was also picked up by the Ask a Chief Facebook page, and the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force team was tracking. So that was amazing, right? What do all these leaders have in common? Risk. They took risk because they said maybe the way that things have always been should not be that way anymore. And thank God for Michael Scott, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. So what? Why now? Well, this is the reason. Because if we do what we've always done, we will be outpaced by China and Russia. They are our most immediate near-peer adversaries. The writing is on the wall. You can hear COMAC talk about it. You can hear Chief of Staff talk about it. You can hear everybody in leadership positions talk about it. So I'm going to leave you with this final tidbit, and then we'll move on to the culture panel. If what I said today doesn't apply to you, or you think to yourself, nah, this guy's nuts, don't want to hear what he has to say, you're probably right. But I implore you, for my kids, for your grandchildren, for your country, consider one of these 3 words. Please. Thank you for your service. We appreciate everything you've done. But it's time. So I appreciate your time, and I can tell you that there is one other thing I want to leave you with. There's hope. Because the people who are going to be on this panel in a second are absolutely phenomenal people with amazing ideas. They're courageous risk takers, and they don't like the status quo. General Murphy's here in a Hawaiian shirt. That's amazing.
That's all I wear.
And with that, I'll leave it to our moderator. Thank you.